My name is Johnny. I've been conducting Sasquatch research for several years now, the majority of which has been done in Georgia. I've conducted field research in various parts of the state, all for the purpose of collecting evidence to prove that the creature known as Sasquatch does exist. I've seen and experienced things that were nothing short of life-changing. Some of those events I experienced alone. Sometimes as part of a team.
For secondary, when you don't have the upper hand.
You look a little wild-eyed, man.
Yeah, man, the damn thing flanked us.
That was the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
My fascination with these creatures started because of experiences I had on and around my own property. Hello. Did you hear that? In 2025, I released a 2-part docuseries that consisted of the most compelling evidence I have collected over a period of 7 years just on my own property. Documented interactions, physical evidence, video.
Right there, look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a face.
And audio evidence. I'm a member of a Sasquatch research team, the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. When thinking about my next project, it only made sense that I would focus on the research we have done as a team. We've collected some very convincing evidence, and we've had some absolutely amazing experiences on a property in East Georgia. But as I tried to organize my next documentary, my next project, I could not silence the voice in the back of my head. It was my conscience, reminding me that I was leaving something out, reminding me that I had a debt to pay. It's a spiritual debt, a debt that can only be paid with the truth.
From you slipped away, no more words for you. Take it back, no matter what you do. The truth, breathe it out, face your boundaries. Our mission trudge through the mud of time. This truth, this truth, this truth casts shadows in the dark, shadows in the dark.
If you take a look at my average day 4 or 5 months out of the year, it's almost like I'm living 2 completely separate lives in a 24-hour period. I've worked for the same airline for 14 years now. I'm constantly surrounded by people that are constantly in a hurry. Concrete, asphalt, and extremely loud noises all day long. After I get off from work, I make the hour-and-a-half journey through the gauntlet that is Atlanta traffic, which ends at my house that is nestled in a hole in the woods right next to a wildlife management area. I feel the stress leave my body as soon as I reach the end of my driveway. The rest of my afternoon and evening is filled with your average everyday family activity. Maybe cutting the grass, a few household chores, homework with the kids, dinner, or maybe sports practice or games. 4 or 5 months out of the year, a few hours after it gets dark, there is a very good possibility things will get interesting. I usually do one of 2 things. I either sit on the porch and wait for activity or some sign that the creatures are around, or if I know they have been in the area that week, I head back to my sitting spot at the back of my property where I've recorded tons of activity.
An hour. Oh, I was about to say that's a really good sign. I'm gonna go get my gear.
As you can see, the first half of my day and the second half could not be more different. It's like living two completely opposite lives all at once that actually perfectly balance each other out. I'm very well aware of how unbelievable and unique my situation is. I consider every bit of it to be a gift. This documentary is going to be a lot different than any content or information I've released in the past. I've always been a pretty blunt, straightforward individual. I have a very matter-of-fact, almost militant style of sharing information. I guess that comes from my personality in general, but the other part comes from the fact that I really consider this to be a very serious topic. Now, over the years, I've narrowed my focus to really only include my own personal experiences and evidence that I've collected myself. I don't do a lot of speculation, and I do my best not to fuse my personal bias into the evidence that I share. In this documentary, I'm going to be stepping out on a limb. I'll be getting very personal and going very deep into aspects of these creatures and my experiences that I normally avoid. I'm going to attempt to explain my own nuanced view of these creatures, my experiences, and the entire situation I've found myself in and how it's developed over the years. Believe it or not, as obsessed and fascinated by these creatures that I am, I see the Sasquatch and my experiences with these creatures as a secondary residual set of circumstances and events that are the result of absolutely profound spiritual events that transformed my understanding of our reality and changed the course of my life. I'm not convinced that Sasquatch themselves are spiritual beings, but I believe my exposure to these creatures and their existence in my life has a spiritual genesis or connection. The Sasquatch activity started around here in about 2017, 2018. And when it started, I didn't know the first thing about these creatures at all. But I had already experienced some other things that were not supposed to exist. In 2012, my family and I started to experience life-changing, profound spiritual events. Those events would start in 2012. They were really spread out, but they would continue all the way until the very beginning of the Sasquatch activity. There was like a line of demarcation. The Sasquatch activity started, and then not very long after that, I experienced my last spiritual event. And these events, one of them, the first one, I cannot express how much it changed our lives. It 100% saved my marriage, and in return probably saved my life. We've got our third kid that's about to be born. And it's crazy to look back on all the things that have happened over the years that I thought at the time were just like disasters, really bad things that happened, to realize that they had to happen in order to end up where I'm at right now, having the family that I have now. The very first event that my wife and I experienced proved to us beyond a shadow of a doubt that God is real. I spend so much time running around in the woods trying to prove the existence of Sasquatch, which I do think is very important, and I feel obligated to do that. But I really feel obligated to share these spiritual events. I've had 3 Class A sightings, numerous interactions. From everything that I've seen, these creatures are flesh and blood. And a lot of the things that seem to be supernatural or paranormal or even interdimensional can be explained with rational explanations. But that was only after, a couple years of research and experiencing more and more and more. But I'll tell you this, I still hold out for the possibility that I'm wrong about that. But the fact of the matter is, there is a spiritual side to our reality. And there have been things that I have experienced and even gotten on video that I can't quite understand, that are very confusing. Now, that does not mean that I believe these creatures have abilities, but I have 2 goals here. One is to just share the spiritual events that took place in our lives. And 2, show that there are definitely odd things that go on, even for someone like me who believes that they are just flesh and blood creatures. These are roads I normally don't go down, and we're going to go down these roads together. I'm going to do a little bit of speculation in areas that I normally stay away from. But I've always believed that leaving information out is the same thing as lying. In order to really grasp the impact that the following events had on our lives, I'm going to have to get really personal and kind of go back in my own personal history a little bit. After I graduated high school, I joined the military. I went in the Marine Corps. In 2003, we went to Iraq. Made it through that, came home, finished out my active duty time. While I was still in the reserves, I got on with my local fire department, which I had wanted to do for years. And, life was good. My early 20s were, I thoroughly enjoyed that time. By the time I was about 25, my personal life, my family life, it started to completely fall apart. Just through divorce. I had multiple family members with substance abuse problems, infighting, and death. So right around 2005 up to 2006, it was pretty much getting to the point where I was completely alone. And the only thing that I really had going for me that was any good was my job. In December of 2006, I got in a very serious vehicle accident. I had a guy hit me head on, and then the lady behind me T-boned me. There was a couple life flights, 2 different hospitals, several surgeries. The main problem, there was tons of injuries. Mangled my right arm. They had to do reconstructive surgery, and broken hip and collapsed lungs. Everything in my chest was broken. But the main problem was the fact that the artery in my left arm tore away from my aorta. It tore 2 of the 3 layers of my aorta. And I needed what's known as an aortic endograft. Well, the doctor told my family that I had about a 2% chance of making it. They need to bring everybody up to the hospital. Well, I made it. It was an absolute miracle. And I recognized it for the miracle it was for like 3 weeks. And then I went to my first doctor's appointment. The doctor was, he's very honest, and told me that my days as a firefighter, a Marine, or anything resembling that, those days were over with. That I would never pass a medical background check ever again. And they had no idea how long the graft that they had put in my aorta would actually last. I was the youngest person they'd ever put it in. So I left that doctor's office that day, and I went on about a 3-year path of self-destruction. I pretty much wanted to give up. I remember being very, very angry at God and thinking, why didn't you just take me? Why would you just take everything in my life, including my health, and then just leave me here? I believed in you this whole time. But I basically just felt like he hated me. So I hated him.
Luckily, I eventually met my wife. We got married, had my daughter first, then my son. Things were pretty good for the first couple of years, and then right around 2010, things got bad again. I kept looking backwards. I had a very hard time of finding meaning and purpose in my life. I was still very angry at God and felt like He took all my meaning and purpose. Now I was so blinded because I was looking in the past that I could not recognize the gifts and the blessings I had right in front of me. I mean, I had everything a man could want, but it still wasn't good enough. Obviously, that does not help a marriage. So by 2011, my wife and I we weren't doing good at all. We were going to counseling. I had joined groups, reading books, going to church, doing all kinds of stuff, and nothing was working. Finally, one day, one afternoon, I'm walking across my front yard to go open up the gate, and I just dropped to my hands and knees and begged God to save our marriage, allow Him to allow me to forgive myself for the technical term would be turd that I had turned into, and that He would forgive me. Well, that prayer didn't, just fix everything overnight. Things continued to get worse. And then summer of 2012, my wife and I got in the worst fight we'd ever been in. And this time I thought I was right, which was dangerous, because now I had my excuse to give up. After the fight was done, I told my wife I wanted a divorce, that I was packing my bags, I'm leaving. And I was serious. I was done. I had had enough. I had reached my breaking point. Luckily, the kids were already in bed. She went back to our bedroom, and I went and got a Subway sandwich. And I came home and I ate the sandwich. I'm sitting here in the living room, and when I'm done, I start getting this vision of me getting a pillow and going and sitting out on the rock, or laying on the rock that's in my front yard. And I could just see it as clear as day, and I just had this feeling like I had to go do it. And I remember thinking to myself, what kind of hippie crap is this? Why do I have a longing to go lay on the rock and look at the star, look at the sky? It was late in the afternoon, but it was not dark yet. So I do it. I grab a pillow off the couch and I go outside. And this is what happened.
It is summertime right now as I'm shooting this, which is good because this is the time of evening in which the event took place. That works out really good. It's maybe an hour before it gets dark. And this is the rock that I had all I can call it is a vision. I just saw it in my head. What's really weird about it is this rock goes all the way, all through here. And it would have been better if I would have laid somewhere around here, so I can lay here and look at the sky, right? That would have made way more sense. Or even if I would have turned the other way and laid down on the rock. But I was specifically led to lay down right here. So I laid down just like this, and I was actually smoking a cigarette. I got done with my cigarette and I leaned over to my left towards the house like this to get up, and as I did, a orb, or big ball of light, comes flying out of the woods right through here and disappears right behind the house. Now, this tree right here was much smaller. I fact, all these trees were, so it wasn't nearly this thick. Like a bright reddish orange, about the size of in between, I don't know, maybe a soccer ball, bigger than a volleyball, probably in between a soccer ball and a basketball. It wasn't as big as a basketball. Perfectly round. It was just a ball of light. Weirdest thing I've ever seen. Well, besides the Sasquatch. And it went and disappeared right behind the house. And I ran over here after it disappeared behind the house. I thought maybe it would come flying, you know, out the other side behind my house and keep going or something, or maybe I'd see it back here. Well, I didn't. And that really scared me, because the first thing I thought when I saw it was UFO. That's the only thing I could even come close to pairing it with. My kids' bedrooms are in the back. They were in bed, and it scared the crap out of me. So that's when I turned and I ran inside and told my wife what I'd just seen. Ran inside, checked on the kids, and my wife was laying down in bed, and I told her, look, I know we're in the middle of this fight right now, but I just saw this big ball of light fly out of the woods and fly behind the house, and I have no idea what it was. And I'm standing there thinking, I'm thinking about like the weapons I have, or what am I going to do, blah, 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 you know, and I'm thinking, God, this is a ball of light. What in the world? How do you fight a ball of light, or if it's aliens or whatever? Like, what am I going to do? My wife said, and I could tell she was kind of hesitant, but, you know, this is obviously a normal discussion, right? This is not every day I say, hey, there's a ball of light floating around. And she just looks at me and says, all we can do is pray. So I did. I'm standing right here. And I bowed my head and I prayed. And as I'm praying, all I could think was, there's no way in the world that I'm leaving tomorrow. There's no way in the world I'm leaving, period. This is my family, and they are mine to protect. And I remember thinking that. So I get done with my prayer, and I go back out to the living room. After I said my prayer, I came back out here to the living room. I turned the TV on, and I couldn't have been sitting here but, you know, maybe a minute or so. And I heard what sounded like something on top of the roof, like right above me here in the living room. So I grab a flashlight and a gun. I run outside. I'm looking on top of the house, running back and forth, looking all around the house, look out in the woods. I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. I come back inside, sit down, and again, I'm not sitting here, you know, more than a minute or so. My wife screams my name like I've never heard before. It was blood curdling. Made me want to throw up hearing her scream like that. It was just ungodly, just fear like I've never heard. I've heard pain and anguish to that level, but I'd never heard someone scream in fear like that. Literally jump over the back of the couch and I run back there. I'm like, what happened? Well, for years I've told this story, and my wife, she's not big, even on the YouTube channel and everything. She's never really been big on being on camera. This time she said she would do it on camera. I have recorded her in our bedroom telling her side of the story from that evening and what she experienced. This is the first time she's ever done that. What do you remember?
Well, when I came to bed, I usually sit up in the bed and read my Bible for a couple hours. Or not a couple hours, but I read my Bible for a little while. And so I was probably in bed doing that, saying my prayers, and I was just going to go to sleep. The bed at the time was laying with the headboard against this wall instead of here. And I slept.
You're in the same side of the bed you are right now,
I think
except
so.
the bed was over here
I think so.
against that wall.
Yeah.
So the
it's closer
window
to
would,
where you are now.
right. So the window would have been on your left.
Right. So I saw something that looked like the end of a cigarette burning come in through the windows that are up here, because we've always had curtains, but that's never covered, and come and settle beside the bed, over there, but beside this side of the bed. And it scared the daylights out of me, so I screamed for you, told you what it was. I don't remember if it flew off or don't remember that part.
Well,
But-
this is the part that I found interesting because I didn't realize this.
Yeah, you thought it just appeared.
I thought it just appeared. So if you're looking at her, the story, what I thought happened is it just appeared right here next to her.
Mm-mm.
But it apparently came from that window and came across our bedroom. Did it come across you?
I don't
Do you remember?
think so. If I remember, it came where the foot of the bed, which would have been straight down this way and around that way. I don't remember it going over top of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you saw it come in and then go down and then appear over here next to you.
Yeah. So it's almost like a lightning bug would be. It wasn't like it was it ignited the whole time,
Right.
but like I remember seeing it come in from there, and then it was next to the bed. So as far as I know, it didn't fly over me. I don't remember that. So either it didn't blink for a little while and came across, or it came from where I couldn't see it at the foot of the bed.
Now you described it as the end of a cigarette butt. Why do you describe it like that?
Because that's about the same size it was. It wasn't big.
Was it that bright?
Yeah, like
I remember what you
orangey
told
red.
me.
I think it was red, but it could have been like an orangey red. But it was about the size of the end of a cigarette when you're inhaling, obviously.
Right. Now, after my wife told me what she saw, we were both extremely freaked out at this point. Had no idea what we were dealing with, and I went and got the kids and put them in the bed with us. I turned on all the lights in the house and just hung out until really late, just like waiting to see if something else was going to happen. Nothing happened, so I put the kids back in their beds. It's probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I turn off all the lights in the house. I go to lay down in bed next to my wife, and just like her, I lay down in bed, I grab the covers, I go to pull them up, and that ball of light pops up right next to me, like 2 feet away. The same thing I saw outside, but this time the exact size that she described, and it was even brighter than when I saw it. So I looked over at it, and she's on my right, and I reached over and I hit her on her butt and said, "Hey, it's back." I can't remember if I looked at her when I did it, and when I turned back it was gone, or if it just blinked out. I think I turned towards her and hit her to wake her up. She wakes up, I tell her I saw it again. I go and get the kids, put them in bed with us again, and go through the whole process. Now, after that night's over with, throughout the week, I would be sitting here in the recliner, and my fireplace is over here to my right. I'm watching TV, and every once in a while, I catch what looks like that ball of light over near the fireplace. This is during the summertime, okay? This isn't an ember or anything like that. I would just barely catch it out of the corner of my eye, and I'd look, and it would be gone. Well, that happened probably maybe 3 times throughout the week. By the end of the week, you know, my wife's still freaked out. I've already contacted MUFON because I'm convinced these are like aliens, that we're being visited or whatever. But at the end of the week, my wife's still scared. She works from home doing packages, mailing things, buying things online, stuff like that. So she wants to go downstairs to get her envelopes or whatever that she needs, and she wants me to stand at the stairs while she goes down there. So she goes downstairs, I stand at the top of the stairs, she gets her package, and this is what happens next.
All right, so she gets her envelopes or whatever she's getting. She comes up the stairs, and when she gets probably about right there, The orb appears about a foot over her head, and it stayed locked in position over her head as she came up the stairs. From what I remember, she took about 3 steps, went up 3 stairs, and then it just blinked out.
When that happened, I didn't say a word to her. It was just floating right above her head as she goes up the stairs. Number one, I was afraid she was going to freak out and fall down the stairs. Number two, I was afraid that that was going to be it and she would want to move out 100%. That was a lot.
So how do you feel? Obviously it scared you. After all these years, what do you think about it?
I think it was an intervention of some sort. I think it was spiritual. I think that if that didn't happen, you wouldn't have felt the need to protect like you did at that moment. So, as much as it scared me, it was for the better.
Right.
But I keep my head in the sand with all that kind of stuff. Freaks me out.
Yeah, it's not something we figured out like the next day. It took, because I called MUFON because I thought it was a freaking alien. I thought it was UFOs. And I remember talking to them, and they wanted to come over here, and you were like, no. You didn't want.
Mm-mm.
I guess you figured that if we just ignored it, it would go away.
Pretty much.
So
I try not to, I say prayers. I probably anointed the house after that.
yeah, it took years to figure out, but that's how deep and dark everything was at that moment in time, is we couldn't recognize the miracle for the miracle.
Sure.
Until eventually it caught up and we realized, Jesus, I was leaving that the next day. So that's kind of the way I feel about it. And especially like when it appeared over your head when you were coming up the steps. Like now when I think about it, it was like, it just doesn't get any more obvious than that it appears over your head. Like it's, I don't know. It just felt like, hey, dummy, this is your wife. This is where you need to be. And it's about her. And I think, I don't know. You and I both were doing a lot of praying, but it was probably, I think it was a direct intervention and answer to a lot of prayers.
Well, yeah.
From both of us.
Look where it led. You stuck with me.
Yeah, especially now.
Now, sometime during that week, I actually called MUFON. Actually, I typed out a report. I went to the actual website and typed out everything that happened. I was contacted by the head of MUFON in Georgia and explained everything that was going on. They wanted to bring a team over here and investigate. I talked to my wife, and she wasn't super happy about that. And I just told them, look, we just want this to go away. And it was actually the MUFON investigator that planted that first seed. And he said, you know what? I don't think you're dealing with UFOs. To me, this seems spiritual. It would be years before we would put the whole picture together and have everything work out and life was great, because at the time we're in the middle of it. But again, hindsight is 20/20, and there's just no way around it. It was a spiritual intervention. My belief and faith in God since figuring all that out has become completely unshakable. Now, life gets rough. We have good days, bad days, problems, just like everybody else. But I don't worry about life the way I used to. It's a big deal for me, especially, to know God cares about what's going on in our lives. Now, that was not the end of the orb stuff. In fact, there would be numerous orb events experienced by pretty much every member of my family. I don't remember the exact order of all the events, but you know, because obviously I wasn't into Sasquatch research at the time. I wasn't documenting anything. You know, I wish now that I would have, but it's all in between. So if it started, that first event was summer of 2012, it would last all the way up until around 2017, 2018-ish. And from what I remember, the next thing that happened was me, my wife, and my 2 kids came home one afternoon. It's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. One of their baseball practices or games or something like that. We came home, we park in the driveway, we get out of the truck, and we're walking to the gate, and one of my kids, I believe it was my son, said, "What is that blue light?"
Look up, and there is a blue orb floating right there, right at that wood line. Tell all of them to go inside. I go inside and get a pistol like an idiot. Walk over here. I walk up to right here, about where the orb was, and I fire 2 rounds into the ground. Of course, the orb was already gone, and I really don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what that was supposed to do, but that's what I did.
One of the next events that happened was something my daughter experienced during a storm. We had put her and I guess my son in our bedroom because it was a very bad storm, and there was a big tree on the other side, their side of the house, and we were concerned about that tree. So every time we have a bad storm, we put them in our bed. I recorded her, then, you know, she's not on video, but you can hear her talking. This is what she saw.
Callie, stick your arm out. Nope, straight out, straight out. There you go. She's right over there. So just explain exactly what happened.
It was a while ago. I was little, and I remember it was storming really bad one night, and you and I had come into y'all's bedroom, or y'all told me to come in there so that like a tree wouldn't fall in my room. So I was gonna sleep in y'all's room. I don't remember if Jackson was in there too, but I was laying in bed, and I don't know if I like woke up or if I was trying to go to sleep. But I know that you and Mommy had left the room, and I think y'all were like listening to the storm on the front porch. And I looked over, and above like the nightstand, I saw like a glowing light. It was like, I remember it being, knowing that it wasn't the lamp because it was really bright, and it was very white. So when I saw it, I thought it was an angel. I only saw it for a little bit, and I thought it was an angel, and I went back to sleep because I was like, oh, an angel's watching over us. Like, I can go back to sleep now.
So it didn't scare you at all?
No, it didn't scare me.
How big was it?
Maybe probably a little smaller than a volleyball, around that size.
And what color was it?
It was white. It was very bright white.
Now, did it light up the room too, or was it just...
No, I don't remember it lighting up the room. I think it was just like that one little area above the nightstand.
Now, how far up above the nightstand was it? Near the ceiling, or just like a foot or two?
Like maybe like a foot.
Just a foot above the nightstand, huh?
I think so, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was pretty cool.
The next thing that I remember experiencing was one night. I used to work night shift. I was coming home from work, probably about a mile and a half away from my house. It's probably 11 o'clock at night, something like that. There is an old man that lives in a house on the side of the road, and across the street from his house, he has a garden every year. There's a bunch of corn that's right across the street from his house. He's always out there working on it and tilling and picking corn and doing all that good stuff. I see him all the time out there. As I'm coming up on that plot of corn, I see an orb, and it's a white orb, and it's probably the size of a softball, and it's about 4 feet off the ground, and it's on one side of the corn. And the closer I get, I start to see that there is now another orb, the same size. It looks exactly the same, but it's on the opposite side of the cornfield. I slow down and I'm like looking at these orbs, and then I see there's a car coming behind me. I can see their lights, so I know I can't sit in the middle of the road. I just go home. All right, I got to about right here, and I noticed the orb, the first one, was right there floating. And then when I slowed down to look at it, I looked down here, and the other one was right around where that fire hydrant is, about 4 feet off the ground. My neighbors that were basically targeted by the Sasquatch when all this stuff started, they're the ones that mentioned in conversation that they had seen lights in the woods, the same woods that we just looked at where the blue orb was. So apparently we weren't the only ones throughout this process that were seeing the orbs. What that means, I don't know.
The very last orb event took place right around here somewhere. Unfortunately, back then I did not have a chicken coop, and all this has been, there's tons of trees I took out. It started out where I was in the front, on the front porch, and I heard something back here, and I don't know exactly what it is I heard. Just like a bump or a knock or something moved. It was something very simple. I came walking up back here and I was recording, and one weird thing, there was like an isolated wind, almost like a whirlwind. And just for a second, an orb, a blue orb, just like the one we saw at the side of my property, and when we came home from baseball that afternoon that we all saw together, it turned on for just a second and then turned off again. And I got it on video. I wasn't really into documenting things that much yet, but I do believe I put it on Facebook, and I've looked for it over and over again. I cannot find that video, not the original. I do have screenshots. So that's about the only proof I have of this orb, but it's 100% an orb. I'll show you the screenshot of the orb and then a close-up of it. I went in and all I did was increase the brilliance and the brightness. And there looks like there is 3 red dots surrounding the orb in like a triangle pattern. And there just happens to be, and I hate this because of the way it looks, there just so happens to be a pareidolia style Bigfoot face right up above it. I mean, it kind of looks like a Bigfoot. I don't put much credence into that. That was the last time that I saw an orb, and I was confident it was an orb. There's been a few other times, but I wasn't super sure about it. But this happened like right at the beginning of all the Sasquatch activity. And I'm not even sure, I don't really remember if I was even taking the Sasquatch stuff seriously at that point or not. I know it was just very, very early on. So that's really been the only time there's been a crossover where there's an orb and then there's also Sasquatch activity, around the same time.
First thing first, let's establish some terminology. There are people that believe Sasquatch has abilities, that they are interdimensional, they're spiritual, paranormal, or even extraterrestrial. In the Sasquatch community, people use a term, and that term is woo, W-O-O, and that is to describe the idea that Sasquatch is not flesh and blood. Now, over the years, it's turned into kind of a derogatory term. I'm not going to use that term. I coined another term, and that is liminal. And liminal just means in between. It's a lot easier to say liminal than to say paranormal, interdimensional, Nephilim, blah, 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 right? So anytime I say liminal, that's what I'm talking about. Anything besides flesh and blood. The first year and a half of the Sasquatch activity was very confusing for me. For like 5 years, we had already, my family and I, along with my neighbors, experienced things that weren't supposed to exist. And some of those things were absolute miracles, life-changing, profound spiritual events, seeing orbs. At first it was very scary, then it turned into something that was very profound, life-changing, amazing, felt like a gift, But then the Sasquatch activity started, and then I got confused all over again. I never knew, first of all, that there were people that thought these creatures were liminal. The only information I had was from a few episodes of Finding Bigfoot, a few things here and there on the Discovery Channel, stuff like that. I was into UFOs a little bit. That was about it. And everything I knew about the creature was that it was just a creature. Within that first year and a half, when I started doing research online, I found that that's really not the case at all, that there's a lot of people that believe these creatures are liminal, going all the way back to the very beginning of documented history. Various Native American cultures all over the U.S. have a place for Sasquatch in their culture, right? Well, they don't all agree on what Sasquatch is. Some of them say Sasquatch is an animal. Some of them say Sasquatch is another tribe of people. And then there are others that believe that Sasquatch is a straight up spiritual being that's a protector of the forest, or a spiritual being that you need to stay far away from. What I found very telling is, as time went on, I started reaching out to other researchers in the state of Georgia, and none of them agreed on what Sasquatch was. I kind of boiled it down to 3 different researchers. I guess it's kind of, by chance. I reached out to them, started talking to them, started picking their brain, tried to learn a few things. And out of the 3 of them, one 100% thought these creatures were flesh and blood and was a part of a group that was trying to harvest one. Another guy was really into the liminal aspects of these creatures and dog man and all kinds of other things. The third, which was by far, kind of the most interesting, was a gentleman that for the first month or so only talked about the physical aspects of these creatures and the evidence that he'd collected and the experiences he had. Eventually, I guess after he warmed up to me, when the orbs came up, he decides to tell me that he thinks that orbs turn into Sasquatch and Sasquatch turn into orbs, and they're one and the same. After a year or more online looking into the topic, I decided, you know what, there's just way too much conflicting information and I still don't know what I'm dealing with. This is nuts. What I decided to do was throw everything out. I threw out my own personal spiritual experiences, not all together, but I wasn't going to let those affect my research into the Sasquatch. I tried to throw out all my personal bias, my religious beliefs in general. I didn't want that to affect what I thought about Sasquatch. I was only going to let the evidence dictate how I would carry on. The audio and video evidence I collected myself, the experiences I had, the things I saw. I was going to throw everything else out, right? Pretty much start from scratch, and that's what I did. When we created a group, the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade, our first rule was, we had different people that believed in different things in the group, but all I asked from everyone, including myself, is that we just tell people what happened. If it looks like it's liminal or it doesn't fit into our personal paradigm or it makes us feel uncomfortable or even makes us look stupid, we still have to report what happened. And that's pretty much been our only rule, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. Now, with the docuseries that I put out, they exist, 7 Years of Sasquatch in Georgia. I go over the entire process here on my own personal property and all the evidence that I've collected and the things I did and the different types of techniques, and all the way up to about 4 or 5 months ago. Okay, it's pretty current. None of which includes a lot of anything that appears to be liminal, because there really hasn't been that much. In the spirit of, full disclosure, there has been a few things here and there that were strange, that I couldn't exactly readily come up with a rational explanation for. One of those things when it comes to Sasquatch is just like timing. There are things that happen that don't seem like they should have. Like the statistical odds of things happening are astronomical. And the only way I really know how to explain it is to really show you. And I will show you with one of the first videos I got of what I believe to be a Sasquatch. Now, what happened after, the first year or so, I started branching out. I started doing research in other parts of Georgia, getting, other research partners. Then I started going to the wildlife management area that's behind my house, right? I figured if they're not here, they're only here 4 or 5 months out of the year, they're probably back there in that management area. I started going back there. I also started doing Facebook Lives when I was walking in the management area. I had one goal on this particular day, to walk further down this one particular road than I had ever been. I also wanted to see how long the Facebook Live would work. All day long, for 3 hours, I recorded in front of myself. There was only twice during that day that I recorded behind myself. I would stop the live or it would cut out, and for whatever reason, I don't even remember why I did it, I decided to record behind myself. There's 2 videos. Those 2 videos together were only a little over a minute. The one video I'm going to show you is less than a minute. I think it's like 54, 55 seconds long. I take those videos. Nothing happens that day. I come home. I go over the videos. I don't see anything. The second day, I go over the videos again, and I see way back, as far as I can see down the road behind me, there's something moving. I zoom in, and all I know to tell you is this. It looks like a gorilla, pretty much. Now, before I even show you guys this, there's a reason why I didn't put it in the other documentary. It cannot be used to try to prove the existence of Sasquatch. It's too far away and it's too blurry. You can't see any detail. But what I can tell you is you're going to be able to tell this thing is alive, 100%. It's all one color. I do comparison shots. It's my size or bigger. There's a point where it looks like it's kind of in a 3-point stance, like a gorilla. This is definitely something that is alive. I personally believe that it is a Sasquatch, but I cannot prove that. It took me 3 months to find the exact spot where I took the video because I'd never been that far down that road before. You'll be able to tell in the original video it's winter, and in the comparison shots it's like spring, right? But I do eventually find that spot. I go out there, I take the measurements. It's 175 yards away. So what you're about to see is a video that was taken behind myself on an unstabilized cell phone at 175 yards away. And unfortunately, this is all you get. But if you ask me, I do believe it was a Sasquatch. In fact, I kept going back there after figuring that out and after finding that spot, and I did have more activity in that area, including something very, very large jumping out of a tree and running off. The only other real option is man in a suit or bear. There's so few bears in this area that if they actually show up, they end up on the news. I've been in that wildlife management area over and over again, never found any sign of any bear. It's not impossible, but I do not believe that that's what you are looking at in this video. But the whole point of this is the fact that it's just the odds of me walking that road for 3 hours, recording in front of myself the whole time, and for whatever reason, I decide to record behind myself twice, and then I catch this thing going across the road. It's just weird. It just seems very unlikely to happen, and it kind of just barely touches what I would consider liminal. But then again, it's not much, right? All the way down at the end of the road, you're not going to be able to see much. And there it is. And you will see it start to take shape. It's like a leg folding out there from that blob. And then it straightens. See it bent. And then straightens out. Now that looks like a gorilla to me, folks. One of the most common things that other researchers have pointed to that kind of falls into the category of, hey, something's going on here. Something weird is happening when these creatures are around, is the amount of times that electronics seem to fail. Personally, I think most of these failures come down to human error or just the fact that electronics fail all the time. But there has been a few things that have happened over the years that I found to be very strange when it came to electronics. I've had other witnesses with me when some of these strange things have happened. I also know other researchers that have experienced very, very strange things when it comes to electronics. One of the more common things that I've experienced is abnormalities when it comes to parabolic microphones. The first one I'm going to go over, I actually brought up a little bit in the docuseries. I'm going to go a little deeper into this one. This is about a $700 parabolic microphone. It works pretty good. There was a couple of times that I would take the actual parabolic with me down to the sitting spot and nothing would happen. I went through a long period of trial and error on the amount of things that I would take down there with me. And it seemed to be the more stuff I had in my hand, the less likely it was for me to have activity. So what I started doing was I would go down to the sitting spot, and if I would have activity, I would come back to the house, and then I would set up the parabolic microphone to listen into the woods, back into that direction, to see if they would continue to do stuff. I got some pretty good results with that. On one occasion, I set the parabolic microphone up. It sounded like the subjects came in through the woods. There were a few throws and stuff, and then it picked up this weird background noise, right? On another occasion, I can't remember if I had gone down to the sitting spot or if I was just in the woods. I can't remember what happened at the beginning of that night. I came back to the house, I got the parabolic, and I went on my back deck. I was super obvious about the entire process. And in fact, I've completely given up on trying to trick these things. Everything I do is super obvious, and the entire goal is for me to be as unaggressive as possible. I've been trying to build trust all these years. That's what every bit of that is about. I went on the back deck. I stood there with the parabolic microphone on the handrail, and I would just stand there. And every once in a while, I'd make a few noises or whatever else. It didn't take long before I started hearing movement and like breaking sounds a little further off, back towards the creek. Eventually, these sounds got closer and closer to the point to where something was thrown, which sounded like a stick, and it hit the deck. As I'm sitting there listening to all this, and they're getting closer and closer, I decide to clear my throat, which I do all the time. If there's been a period of time where there's not much noise or I've stood still for a while, I clear my throat. And the whole point of doing that, again, is to not look like a predator, to not look like I'm trying to hide or deceive them. I cleared my throat, and right after I clear my throat, something else in the woods right in front of me, down below my deck, clears its throat. Whatever it is, it's got a very deep voice. It's very obvious, okay? Now, all in all, it's an absolutely awesome recording. It's one of my favorite because of how close it is. The entire first part of the recording is just normal. But the closer it gets, the recording completely switches. And now there is this very extreme, almost computer sounding background noise, which again, I have heard before the other time that I put the parabolic out. What this is, I don't know. It's the second time it's happened with this parabolic. The third time that it's happened in general, which I'll get to the very, very first time it happened. But let's take a look at the entire thing, the entire recording, the process of it going through the woods, throwing a branch, hitting the deck. I clear my throat, and then it clears its throat. And you'll be able to see the switch is so obvious from it being a clear recording to whatever this background noise is.
Since I've already gone over everything in detail in the first part of the docuseries, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on all the different noises, but still a quick overview and get to the strange part. This is me going out on the deck. Alright, the first sounds of movement in the woods. Alright, now they've gotten closer. This one's super obvious.
part is the throw that hits my deck. That's super obvious. Right in here is the transition. You can see it with your own eyes, that it goes from this really weird, it goes from normal to this, whatever this is. Super weird sounding. I don't know what, again, no idea what's causing this. Now for the super interesting vocal. Again, I already went over this in the docuseries, but it's still awesome. So we're doing it again. That is me clearing my throat. And then I say, that was it. Going back to the very beginning of when all the activity started, I was sitting on the front porch. My dog was up there with me, and the dog freaked out and ran down the sidewalk going towards my driveway, right? Well, I followed, and I got about right here, and I heard from where the driveway is, never mind all that. That's my son's 20-foot windmill that he decided to build for no reason. I heard what sounded like footsteps, like very heavy, bare feet slapping concrete. Whack, 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 whack. Now, I was super excited because over here, I have a camera right there. Now, I don't use these cameras anymore. The DVR doesn't work. I use Wi-Fi cameras that I move around so I can get to the edge of the woods, but it covered the entire driveway, right? I'm super excited because whatever was on my driveway, I 100% have it recorded. I think this happened around like 11:49 or something like that, right? I go into the DVR, I pull up the video, and there is video missing from 11:30 to like 12:05. There's nothing there. To this day, that's been one of the weirdest things that's ever happened when it comes to electronics. Could it have been user error? I guess it could have. I never had anything like that happen before or since. I don't really know how to explain it, but that slapping noise, it sounded just like bare feet on concrete. Whack, 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 whack. But I actually bought these cameras because of the activity that was going on out here. I thought, again, for the, probably first 6 months or more, that we were dealing with human beings. So I put these cameras up, and I've never gotten anything on these particular cameras. I have on the Wi-Fi cameras, but it was really weird. And, it's just one of those things that
whether it was just a glitch or operator error. It kind of goes in with the whole timing aspect of it too. You know, what are the odds?
I've been blessed in various different ways when it comes to everything that's happened over the years. Having my own personal religious beliefs confirmed and solidified through miracles is surreal. And it's a gift that I honestly don't know how to pay back. But I appreciate every second of it. When it comes to the Sasquatch activity, there's also a part of it that I really appreciate. And that is how all the events, the timeline of how everything took place. There's a lot of people that are not as lucky as me. A lot of people are just in the woods, don't know anything about Sasquatch. They're minding their own business, hunting, fishing, camping. Maybe they're on their own property, and all of a sudden they run into one of these things. And it's life-changing when you're looking for them and it happens. I can't imagine how it feels to just out of the blue learn that now they're not monsters, but monsters are real. You know, we're told our whole lives that things like this don't exist, but they do. But me, my own personal story, I mean, my eyes were opened up by the orb events, and then eventually the Sasquatch stuff started, and it was a little bit at a time, and then it increased and increased until eventually I had a run-in in the woods that pretty much confirmed it, and a year later I've got a sighting, and then it just continues. I get more interactions and more impressive evidence over the years. It's just steady, you know, progressively getting better and better. I'm getting more successful at, you know, learning about them. And then we get to our main research area, a property out in East Georgia. The events that took place out there are, those events are what I think about when I lay my head down at night. It doesn't take me long to fall asleep, but usually the last couple of minutes, right before I fall asleep, at least a couple nights out of the week, those events play over and over again in my head. And I always say the same thing. I can't believe they're real. The Sasquatch Encounter Brigade was born in 2021. It was basically a group of us, prior military, law enforcement, and some other public safety officials. We all got together, decided to do a podcast, and we wanted to do actual field research together. One of our team members, Captain Joe Cayley, lives outside of Augusta. He was contacted by a witness by the name of Happy Harris. Happy grew up in a very rural county outside of Augusta, Georgia. When he was 19 years old, he was deer hunting on his best friend's property. Now, this property had been in this particular family's name since before America was America. It was actually a king's grant. Happy snuck out to this pipeline. He found what looked like a makeshift blind made out of pine saplings, laid down in this blind, and was only there for about 30 minutes. And two of these creatures came up behind him and screamed at him. It scared him so bad he passed out. He woke up 30 minutes later, sitting in the front seat of his truck, which was a couple hundred yards away, and has no idea how he got there. We decided, after all the witnesses that we talked to, his story and this property in general, it was, you know, Sasquatch 101. It's exactly what you're looking for. A very extreme event that happens on an extremely rural property. The very first day we went out there, February 4th, was extremely eventful. We found some really good evidence, and mainly we found a bunch of tracks, which to us meant the creatures were probably still in the area. That afternoon, we had absolutely no idea how right we were. All right, now I like to use a whiteboard in order for people to visualize exactly what's going on. That first day, we found some pretty cool evidence. Again, found some tracks, found some things that kind of look like beds. we found enough to think, all right, maybe something's really here. All right, so there was Happy Harris, me, Scott DeForest, which is another Marine veteran, he's also a Sasquatch researcher, and Captain Joe Cayley, along with another dude from Florida named Joey. We walked around out there, found some pretty neat evidence. That evening, when it got dark, we actually had the property owner came out there, looked around with us. Happy introduced us to him and everything else. That was pretty cool. We sat around talking a little bit, built a fire, and then eventually everybody else left except for me, Scott DeForest, and Happy Harris. This is a pipeline that runs right down the middle of the property, and there's woods on both sides. We had spent most of the day on this side looking around, and we found tracks in the pipeline. Everybody else leaves, and it's me. That's the fire. I'm here, Happy's here, Scott's here. Our vehicles are over here. I'm not sure how long it was after everyone left, maybe an hour or so. We hear what at first we think might be canine howls. Really loud, close, impressive howls. At the time, in person, we really didn't know what we were hearing. Later on, when I get the recording home, it is super obvious that these are not, there's like 3 almost canine sounding howls, and then the ones that come after the canine are like, like a caveman yelling. This is not a canine. We hear those howls in our, we're kind of perked up a little bit. We don't know if anything's going to happen or not. We're standing around the fire, and I keep going in this wood line over here to get wood. I have a cheap parabolic microphone with me. It's like a $40 parabolic that you get off Amazon. We had been passing it around to one another all night. I give the parabolic to Happy, and he notices that whenever I walk over here into this wood line, he points the parabolic in my direction, and he's hearing some kind of weird interference. Well, him and I swap out. I'm like, well, here, let me do it. I sit down in his spot. He goes in the woods. I listen. There's no interference. Scott takes the parabolic. I go in the woods right over here. He points the parabolic at me. There's some kind of weird interference. I take everything off. I've got a knife, a pistol, a phone. I take every bit of that off. I think I even take my belt off. And every time I go into this wood line, for whatever reason, when they point that parabolic at me, it makes some kind of weird distortion sound. Still, to this day, we have no idea why that happened. Shortly after that happens, we start getting activity from this side of the property, right over here in this wood line. And it starts with, we're all sitting around the campfire talking, and I start hearing what it kind of sounds like stomping noises, like something hitting the ground. And I ask them, do you guys hear that sound? It's like stomping. They say they don't hear anything, and then all of a sudden a rock, my vehicle's parked right here. There are no trees overhead. It's out in the middle of the pipeline. Or not in the middle, but it's off into the pipeline. There's nothing over it. A rock very obviously hits my vehicle, and it's super loud, right? And it's a brand new vehicle. I had a GoPro set up on the back of my vehicle recording, but it did record all the audio. After that rock throw, we start hearing like grunts, and we all say, oh yeah, we hear that. And this happens a couple times, and then eventually Happy reaches down, grabs a flashlight, and goes to turn it on. And right when he turns it on, I tell him, don't shine it. I don't want him shining it in the woods. I don't want them to run off, because I've got a thermal camera on a tripod right here that I'm trying to work, like turn a little bit behind me and record. I'm trying to figure out where these things are at. But he turns it on, and right when he turns it on, the recorder hears what sounds like a response, like something is mad that he turned the flashlight on, and it goes, "Arr." For that to be our first night, we were absolutely blown away, right? Never expected that much activity. We knew it was a good spot. We knew there was a history there. We found a little bit of evidence, but that was mind-blowing for our first trip. And there again, on our very first night, we have some type of weird malfunction with a parabolic. What's going on there, I do not know. But we are all 99.9% sure that there was a Sasquatch over here in this woodline. We went out there later on, and Happy found a mound of dirt, like right over here. I was looking around in that woodline with the thermal. I was looking around everywhere, and we never saw anything, and it would make sense that they were possibly behind this dirt pile. We don't know that for sure, but, there again, that's really the only liminal thing when it comes to these creatures being around and electronics. All right, here's the vocals that happened first. I have gone through and removed the crickets up here. You can see them go into this part right here. I have amplified the sound and denoised it, and that's it. Now, you see what I mean? This first part, maybe it's canine, but then you get to this, and there's no way in the world you're going to convince me that this is canine. All right, forewarning. I am Christian, but I am definitely rough around the edges, and I've got a foul mouth still from the military, and this is filled with about as many cuss words as I know. Because what happens is, we're sitting there, like I said before, and a rock hits my brand new vehicle. I'm very torn about that prospect, but then again, I'm also super excited because of the fact now we know they're right there with us. You hear that? You hear that? That same stuff. Did you hear that shit? All right. That's the rock hitting my vehicle. That same stuff. Did you hear that shit? Now we're discussing the possibilities of something falling out of the tree, which is not possible. And that is something that has come up a lot over the years, and that is these, what sounds like mouth pops. We did not hear that in person, but the camera picked it up. That was close behind us. Yeah, it wasn't far off behind you. An obvious grunt. We all say, I heard that. this is where Happy goes to reach down, grab the flashlight, turns it on, and I say, "Don't shine, don't shine." Tell me that ain't super weird. Obviously, for our first trip, number one, as a team, but on this property, we were extremely happy and extremely excited. All right, so that was in February 2022, right? We went several more times, maybe 3 more times between February and April. Some of, like, a couple of twosies and threesies, you know, not everybody went out there all at once. April 12th, 2022. Pretty much all of us that were there before went out there again. The first part of the day, me and Scott DeForest, we went and checked out this side of the property, okay? We'd spent most of our time on this side, and there's actually a big creek that runs right across the pipeline and connects these two sides. Anyway, me and Scott walked all through here to the creek. We found some pretty interesting things. Handprints actually in the sand. We even found, I'm not big on structures, but we found what looked like an asterisk with a 10-point deer skull underneath it. The whole time, while me and Scott were walking around here, possibly 3 hours, it was just me and him, I was recording in front of me, and I also have a GoPro on my back. The other guys get out there, Happy and Captain Joe. In the middle of the afternoon, we're all hanging out right here where our fire ring is. We don't have a fire yet because it's in the middle of the afternoon. On the other side of the property, there is a lumber company out there cutting trees down. So you can hear that. It's pretty noisy. Well, we sit around and talk for maybe 2 hours. Unfortunately, Happy Harris has got to go back to work the next day, so he can't stay out there with us. So it's me, Captain Joe, and Scott DeForest. Now, what we decided to do is me and Captain Joe, we go back to this other side over here where we'd been before, and we're going over there for a specific reason. So me and Captain Joe, we go over to this other side over here to go check out the beds that we found before. Now, this right here, this is shooting lanes. There is a deer stand right here. And at one time, there were shooting lanes that were cut. Well, when we were there during 2022, all that was grown up pretty much with a bunch of pine saplings. But it still was pretty, it was thin enough to travel through. So there was a trail through it. So him and I walked through here. We leave Scott back here, right? Captain Joe and I are walking around this whole side for about 45 minutes. We don't find anything, we don't see anything, we don't hear anything. And him and I are having a discussion. All right, dude, it's time to go back. I don't think they're here. Nothing's changed out here. We found some interesting things on the other side. Maybe they'll come out tonight. We're thinking that because of the logging crew that's on the other side of the property, that there's no way we're gonna have anything really happen. So him and I start making our way back. Now, what you have to understand is this. As a Sasquatch researcher and just a human being in general, the events of this day, again, are what I go to sleep thinking about. It was as a researcher, one of the most successful yet worst failure ever as researchers. You'll see this in a second. But what happened that day was so profound. We learned so much that it was just absolutely mind-blowing. And to be honest with you, it was very hard for me to go back to real life after this. It was very hard for me to have these experiences on that day and to know that what we experienced was possible and we have this property, and I got to get up and go work a 9 to 5. Like, it was just, it still to this day bothers me. But what happens next is, unfortunately, and this is the biggest screw up, I'm not recording in front of myself. I've run out of battery life on my phone. It's not completely dead yet. I still got a little bit, but I'm out of memory. We are convinced nothing's going to happen, but I do have my rear-facing GoPro that's recording. I'm walking along, and this is what's really important, and this is kind of this is where the liminal stuff comes in. I'm walking along, and there is this stick laid down. It's like a dead tree, not very big. But I do this stutter step across the stick and turn 360 degrees. I straighten back out, and I take a few steps, and I stop dead in my tracks, and I look to my right, and there is a Sasquatch standing right there in front of me, about 50 feet away, completely unobstructed. It's all black. It's got a gray face. It's actually got a white goatee, and it's got like a poofy cowlick thing up front. It's just hair that sticks up in the front, almost like a cone. It's no bigger than me, and it's standing there like kind of hunched over like this, and its arms are like this, and it's got his head turned down, and it's scowling. It's like, but I see it just as plain as day. And the only thing I can think is my GoPro on my back is running. So the quickest thing for me to do is to turn around and give it my back. And this also goes to show you that I wasn't scared at all. It wasn't big, it wasn't menacing, even though it was kind of like scowling at me. To me, I called it a juvenile because it kind of looks like a lanky teenager, but for all I know, it was a female, okay? All I know is I'm going based on size. Again, it wasn't any bigger than me. So I look at it, really look down, and I stick my hands in my pocket, and I turn around away from it to try to get it on the GoPro, okay? I turn like this. In fact, let's go outside, and I'll show you exactly what happened. All right, I am going to demonstrate exactly what happened that day. This won't take but a couple minutes, so it was not worth driving 3 hours and 20 minutes out to the property. I just want to give you a good idea of exactly what happened. You're about to see the rear-facing GoPro video, but I want everybody to understand where I was, where the creature was, and exactly what happened, and then where the camera was facing. Now, this is my current setup. Got the 2 cameras on either side and the one on the back. Normally, I have a body camera on the front. I learned my lesson from that day. On the day of the sighting, I had the GoPro on my back, and it was kind of facing more behind me, but to my right. This area right in here. It wasn't facing directly behind me. Now, from here to my cutout right there, my Sasquatch cutout, which I'm going to walk to, that's 50 feet. That's about how far away it was from me. That's actually 51 feet from right here, but it's close enough. There is a drop off right here, and we're going to pretend like this is the creek. There is a very large creek that runs across the pipeline out there on that property, which you've seen on the whiteboard. And then there's a bunch of little creeks that run in the woods in that particular spot. And I was on that side of the creek when I saw the creature, and the creature was 10, 15 feet on the other side of the creek. Now, when we started out, Joe and I are walking, and we cross the creek coming this direction, going away from the creek. And the entire time, the GoPro is actually facing the right direction.
It is recording where the Sasquatch is going to be as I'm walking away from the creek, pretty much. I walk away from the creek, kind of pretty much in a straight line. I get to the downed tree. It's just a small one. And I walk up, and the camera is already facing in the direction where the Sasquatch is going to be. Right over there. And I do like a 360-degree turn. Like that. I don't remember exactly what my feet were doing. And I do the 360-degree turn. I walk. I think it's like 4 or 5 steps. And to this day, I have no idea why I stopped and why I looked to my right. I don't remember hearing anything or seeing anything. But I stopped dead in my tracks, and I turn and I look and I see it. And you can actually see the buckle on my backpack when I stop. And then right after I stop, it goes like that. That's me going jerking from actually seeing it. When I watched the video, in my head, it went by a lot quicker. Like it was like instantaneous and the incident was over with. But it actually lasts a lot longer than I remember. So I stop, I look directly at it. It's looking directly at me, 50 feet away, completely unobstructed. At one point, I kind of turn and look over to see if I can see Joe. And this whole time I'm debating on what to do. It's like my mind's running 1,000 miles an hour. And after I kind of look over my shoulder, I look directly down at the ground and stick my hand in my pocket, because I've already made up my mind that there's no way I can get this out fast enough. The GoPro's already running. So I reach in, you can see my elbow go up, and then my hand goes in my pocket. And then I do the turn to try to get it on the camera. And I go like this. But one interesting thing is, and this is, it's kind of crazy, and I really think this just comes down to their intellect and them being able to read body language. I looked at it. I kind of look over in Joe's direction. I look back, and then I look down and I stick my hand in my pocket, right? Well, I haven't even started to step and turn yet, and you can actually hear it taking its first steps, okay? So apparently it knew that I was about to turn. As I'm about to turn, it apparently starts taking off. I turn, I go like this, I dig around, I get my hand in my pocket, I dig my phone out, I go to the video, and then I turn back around to try to get it on video, right? And I'm looking back and forth like this. And then I say, Joe, they're here. I swear to God, I just saw one. Well, at that moment, what I don't realize, I don't know if it was shock, if it was me being stubborn, or if I thought it was Joe. But the reason why I didn't get it on video, it just so happens that there's only one direction that this thing could run in order for me to not get it on video, and that's the direction it ran. It went this way and actually would get to my side and in front of me as I turn. So I'm like this, hand in pocket. I turn and it's going this way and I don't know it. Then when I turn around again, you can actually hear in the video that it's breaking things, like making a bunch of commotion. And that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it was shock, me being stubborn, because there was no way in my head that this creature was going to come our direction. Joe was behind me about 60 feet. And then the camp was back that way. That's the direction we were going. But this thing decides to go that direction too. I was convinced, even after it happened, I end up going across the creek trying to look for its tracks. I'm convinced it went that way. I didn't realize at that moment anyway, that it was actually making noise and breaking things. You can hear the birds going nuts, the whole 9 yards. After I say, Joe, they're here, I swear to God, I just saw one, he says something about his 12 o'clock here. I completely ignored him. He was hearing the breaking. And that's what he was talking about. He heard, because he was facing this direction. He's behind me 60 feet. So let's go look at the rear facing GoPro, and I'll walk you through everything that's happening, and then we're going to take a look at a few frames.
You're looking right down the creek to where it's eventually going to be standing. Camera is all over that area. Joe behind me. Fast forward a little bit. Camera gets that spot again, all over that area again. There's a 360-degree turn right there. You see where that pink ribbon is? Right across the creek. Kind of across the creek and to the right of the pink ribbon is where the Sasquatch is about to be standing in a matter of seconds. I stop. I see it. You see that buckle? That buckle shakes. That's right when I see it. Right when I make eye contact. Right there. Turn. It's already running off. I don't know that. You'd actually hear it breaking the heck out of stuff and the bird going nuts.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, but
They're here. I swear to God, I just saw one.
Now this is when Joe says he hears something at his 12 o'clock.
I'm not going to move. It's 12 o'clock here.
Hold on.
The only thing that I've found that is suspicious is during the 360-degree turn. And you see the pink ribbon. Look up above the pink ribbon on my side of the creek. There is something, it looks big and black up that tree. Unfortunately, there's no way to know. There's too much movement. It's 1080p and it's too blurry. For all I know, it's very, very close. But then if you keep looking across the creek, that tree in the middle of the screen that's across the creek, and you follow it up, there's somewhat of a black silhouette up there. it's the right area. If the Sasquatch was up in the tree and then came down that tree, he would be in right about the same spot. But again, it's out of focus. You can't tell anything. We have no idea what that is. For all I know, it's a branch with something hanging off of it that's much closer. But again, these are just the only things when I look for anything that could possibly look like a Sasquatch right before the sighting. That's the only thing that there is, and that's not much at all.
The reason why this sighting fits in to the theme of this documentary is because of the way it made me feel. Out of everything that I've experienced, seen, and heard, this is the one thing that made me feel like something was going on. It's like this thing just appeared out of nowhere. Now, I know that that's not true. Or I think I know that that's not true. But when you consider the fact that that camera was pointed in the right direction like 90% of the time. And then I do the 360-degree turn and then take, 4 or 5 steps, and I look up and it's standing there. And it didn't show up anywhere in any of that video, and it just so happens that like it's standing in the exact right spot for the camera to not get it. And then when I turn my back to it and act like I'm not looking at it, it had a couple choices for directions it could go, right? There was only one direction that it could go to where that camera wouldn't get it, and that's the one that it chose. I turn this way and it runs this way, you know. The whole thing was just super surreal. But here's the deal. I've been through this video over and over again. In fact, I've been through every single second of like the 45 minutes of video leading up to this, trying to find any sign of us being followed, or cannot find a thing. The only thing that I have found that is even suspicious at all is during that 360-degree turn up in the trees. But it's so out of focus, and the quality of the video is so low, it's only 1080p, that there's just no way to tell what you're even looking at. So that doesn't really help either. Again, no answers. That sighting was the beginning of an unbelievable afternoon. By the end of that afternoon, all 3 of us will have seen 2 Sasquatch. Because of time, and because that entire property, from Happy Harris's personal story to some of the stuff you've already seen, to the rest of what happened that day, and then the events that unfolded after that day, it all deserves its own documentary pretty much, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to stop with my sighting, okay? We're going to stop right there. But what I can tell you is this. It was 100% confirmed that the one we saw went down on all 4s. Not only went down on all 4s, it was seen doing what's known as the spider crawl, which its belly is almost completely flat on the ground, and its arms are cocked out like this, and its legs are cocked out in the same manner, okay? Confirmed 100%. I will tell you this, Scott is the one that saw it in that position. We had an artist do a rendering of what Scott saw. Considering the fact that we have confirmed that they go down on all 4s and that they do this spider crawl, the other experiences I've had on my own property with their speed, their ability to move completely and totally silently, and their intellect, I feel a lot better about that day. I think there is definitely more rational explanations. But the whole point of this is to show that I get it. I understand why people think these creatures might have abilities. Because trust me, at the end of that day, I felt like they had all types of abilities. For the first 6 years of having interactions on my property, just about every single interaction that took place happened around the perimeter of my yard itself. It was all on their time. I spent a whole lot of evenings just waiting for these creatures to show up. And it's not from lack of trying. I've spent God knows how many hundreds of hours out in these woods trying to instigate an interaction, and there's only a handful of times that they actually reacted to me being in the woods and away from my yard or my house. In 2023, that all changed. And it all changed right here. This is the area that I simply call my sitting spot. It's not a great nickname, I actually need to come up with a better one. But I think what happened and what caused the change is for about a year leading up to the interactions I would have back here, I started gifting on and around that hill in very specific spots. One evening, after checking on the gifts that I left over on that hill, I was crossing the creek right down there, and there was a wood knock that came directly from the same area that I just left, where I just got done checking on the gifts that I left. I went and sat down, and there was a throw, one single throw. I eventually made my way up here, sat down on this log, and did a wood knock. And I got another response, another throw. There was just 2 objects thrown and 1 wood knock that first night. And that first night I had no idea how things were about to change. After that first night, I started coming back here like several nights in a row. And what would end up happening is over the period of 3 months, I would have about, I think that first year in 2023, maybe about 6 times where I could come down here, do a wood knock, sit around and wait, and within 5 to about 30 minutes, they would show up. They would respond with wood knocks, throw objects, break things and run off. They would basically just run out here and perform. They have done that 2 years in a row, in fall of 2023 and fall of 2024. Now, I've documented every bit of this on the YouTube channel. I also went over it, everything that happened ad nauseum in They Exist, 7 years of Sasquatch in Georgia. Good job. All right. Good job. That almost hit me. But I want to end our time together right here. because this is where everything came together and made sense. When I first started out doing this, I was only using a GoPro and a cell phone, and using very little light. I started using a chem light, green to be specific. And the reason why I did that is I did not want to scare them off. What I figured out over the years is every bit of this was about trust, patience, and being as unaggressive as I could possibly be, which I've brought that up before. And by just using that chem light, apparently it gave them the confidence that they needed to come in very close. In fact, there were 2 different times when I was just using the chem light, the GoPro, and my phone that they came up within 15 to 20 feet. They would start out throwing things and breaking things out in front of me. They would do that for a number of minutes, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then eventually one of them would run up behind me. Well, it got to the point to where 2 things would happen. Now, I started out that first year trying to bring out the parabolic and my thermals and all kinds of stuff. And when I would bring a lot of stuff out here, I wouldn't have activity, or the activity would start and then quit, like after about 5 minutes. So I got really frustrated, and I just used the GoPro and the phone and the chem light. But then after they ran up behind me, it kind of became too much. Number one, how do I prove to people that this is really happening? And number two, it's kind of an uncomfortable feeling to have them get so close. So what I started to do is I finally, the second year, implemented a night vision phone. And I would place it back here, and I would sit right there on that log, and I would still have the activity happen, but they quit running up behind me. As a lot of these different things played out, it was very easy to jump to conclusions. It seemed like they had the ability to appear and disappear at will, to get closer than they should be able to. Things didn't make sense with timing. It's like it was something always working against me. It didn't feel natural. But having these experiences out here really slowed things down and allowed me to process all the information. And this is what I think is going on. Number one, they're highly intelligent. They are not just a monkey. I refuse to believe that. I've seen too much. I've experienced too many things. They are extremely smart. I think they know human beings inside and out from watching us for hundreds of years. I think they can read body language very well. I think they are self-aware. I think they 100% know that they outclass us in every physical metric there is. They're faster, they're more quiet, they're stronger. And the key thing that I've learned over the years is their ability to drop down on their stomachs and to do the spider crawl or to walk around on all fours. I believe they are doing that a lot more than people realize. And that is how they're able to get up so close. Now, the being as silent as they are, I don't know how exactly they're accomplishing that, but a bear walking around in the woods does not make very much noise at all. There's a lot of other animals that move around without making noise. You know, definitely not like a squirrel. A squirrel sounds like a 500,000-pound bull coming through the woods, right? But other animals, they don't do that. All in all, from everything I've experienced, I believe these are just flesh and blood creatures. But we are dealing with, the best analogy I know to use is we are basically hunting one of the X-Men. They just have these natural abilities that surpass ours. And you combine that with their intellect, and it seems paranormal. It seems supernatural. It seems liminal. It seems like they're from another planet, but I do not believe that is the case.
They do too many things that natural animals do. They apparently eat, they defecate, they have young. Even at night, another thing they do is they stay behind things and hide at night in the dark when there's no light at all. I believe they're more careful than we can ever imagine, and I wouldn't be surprised to learn that they have a photographic memory. I don't know that for sure, but I would not be surprised if that were the case. But again, like with the entire transition with using the equipment seemed to dictate their actions. If these creatures were able to turn invisible or come in and out of portals or do all these other things, I do not believe the equipment would dictate their movements. All in all, despite all the little things that you've seen, and I've shown these things in the spirit of complete and total disclosure. Again, there are weird things that I'll probably never get. A lot of it comes down to human error, equipment failure, and going back to that day where we had the sightings, or the sighting that I went over. We learned a lot that day. We learned just how smart they are.
I don't know if you caught that or not, but when I was down there making that video at the sitting spot, I heard something behind me. Did you see me turn in the video? Well, I have a really good reason to believe that that was them. I was wearing the rear-facing body camera, and this is what it picked up.
For the sighting that I went over, we learned a lot that day. We learned just how smart they are.
I wasn't sure whether to include all this or not, because I know I've already gone long, but before I went to the sitting spot to make that video, I had already recorded a vocal. I'm going to show you guys the vocal real quick, but I did a completely separate video on the things that happened over a period of 2 days near the end of me shooting this documentary, and I will post the link in the description of this video.
What the hell was that?
Having activity down there this time of year is pretty much to be expected. It is the end of August, right at the beginning of September. So it worked out pretty good. All right, the conclusion. As you've seen, I've really tried to base everything that I've done on evidence. So far, the evidence does not suggest that these creatures have any type of liminal abilities. Like I said before, I am prepared to be proven wrong about that, but I've got to follow the evidence. The fact of the matter is, I've always been the type of person that needs to see proof before I just believe in anything, even when it comes to my own faith. And it's kind of something I felt bad about for a little while, is the fact that I did lose my faith. I still believed in God, but I lost faith in Him that I should have known. But I mean, I was just too young in my Christianity to understand this. I should have known that despite all the bad things that were happening in my life, that there was a plan. And if I would have just buckled down and, leaned in on my faith, then maybe things wouldn't have been so rocky. But I don't know why. I guess maybe it's because God just knows who I am inside and out. He actually proved it to me, and I feel very fortunate. When I look back through my entire life, I have always felt this existential angst, a feeling of not belonging, or like I was, only way I know how to describe it is like my life was on this timeline. It's on this path. And the entire time I was on this path for years, off and on, it felt like I was on the wrong one, that I should have been over here somewhere. And it didn't matter what I did, whether things were good or bad. There were points where I thought when I became Christian that maybe I'm sinning too much or I'm not doing enough for God or whatever. It didn't matter what I did, I would still get that feeling. And there's a couple things that I've never told anyone when it comes to that feeling and like really connecting to it. When I was at the fire department, I remember being at work one day and getting ready, putting my uniform on and going to walk out of the bathroom and looking at myself in the mirror, and like for just a split second, it's almost like I connected with my future and I felt like it wasn't going to last. Like somehow, some way in that moment, I knew I wasn't going to be a firefighter anymore. And I guess I kind of just brushed it off to stress, everything else in my life. You know, I was taking classes too. Maybe I just thought it was a little worry. But 6 months later, I get in the wreck. I remember just about every single girl I dated from the time I was 19 until I met my wife. I could tell you within a week that it wasn't going to go anywhere. And that's very hard to deal with. It's hard to build relationships with people and friends. Like I just knew somehow, some way that certain people just weren't going to be there anymore. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't there. And it took me almost dying and having everything stripped away from me in order for me to move, to meet my wife and get married. We moved in together. We went out on like a Monday for the first time. We hung out. By Saturday, I'd moved in. 3 months later, we were married. A month after that, she was pregnant with our first kid. We knew instantly. When it comes to the house that we live in, and me being right here and having the life that we have, we were in the middle of selling our other house. And we had found another property on a lake. It was inside of a neighborhood, but it was on a lake. Beautiful house, beautiful property, beautiful lake, beautiful neighborhood, like picturesque. We put some money down. Somebody came in behind us and bought it instantly with cash. And we just got hosed on the deal altogether. Our house sold, we had nowhere to go. We eventually moved in with her mother for a little bit. That's when kind of our problems really started, or got worse. They didn't really start with that, but they got worse. And then she moved, we lived there for a time period together, and then I moved out on my own. Eventually we found this house. We were in a hurry. It was a foreclosure that needed a lot of work, and it was definitely not what I wanted to do. But we did it anyway. My entire life, everything that had happened in my life had been sending me down this path to have me end up right here with the family that I have, having the experiences that I would eventually have. So how does the orbs and the spiritual stuff play into the Sasquatch, and how can I experience both of them and not think that the Sasquatch are spiritual? It's very simple. Even though I believe that Sasquatch are flesh and blood and I'm technically not woo, I'm Christian. Everything's woo. My entire worldview is woo. Okay, I'm going to use that instead of liminal. If you're Christian, you're woo. I think it's simply what I needed in my life. God knew that there were Sasquatch here in this wildlife management area. He knows me. Maybe he knew I needed a distraction. Being involved in this topic itself is actually eventually became an answer to a lot of prayers. It's filled this void of needing like adventure and adrenaline. I can tell you that 100%. I've made friends, like just being involved in this topic. If you would have told me 9 years ago that one day I'm going to have a YouTube channel and be doing documentaries and interviews and talking on the phone to strangers for, hours at a time about Sasquatch, I would have told you you are crazy and get out of my face. I've always kind of been, I was raised an only child. I've never really needed attention. I've always kind of stuck to myself. I'm naturally not a very trusting individual. I've never been a social butterfly at all. I've literally had to work on my own personality flaws in order to be able to do what I do the evidence that I do, share the evidence, and learn things. I've literally had to become a better person to do that. I think I have. That is why I've said over and over again, I consider this a gift, and it's a gift that I feel obligated to share, all of it. None of this is meant to be, I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm definitely not judgmental when it comes to people's beliefs. I'm not really here to preach to people or even try to convert people. I'm doing exactly what I've done with the Sasquatch stuff, is tell you exactly what happened in my life. And I hope I've done it justice. When I talked about at the very beginning that the Sasquatch are a secondary residual effect of the spiritual stuff in my life. God knows me. He knew what I needed. He knew where I needed to be. I don't believe that he brought them to me, or that they're connected to me or attracted to me, or what. I just think they lived here already in this wildlife management area, and that God either lets things happen or makes things happen, and he knew it would play out like this, and for whatever reason, this is what I needed in my life, and I feel very thankful for it and very happy to be able to share it with people. But that concludes our time together. Now, I'm going to end it with this. We had our daughter on the 25th of August, and everything turned out great. My wife's doing good, the baby's doing good, and life just continues to surprise me, and I'm thankful for it. So those of you that don't have children, I'm sure this is annoying to you, but I don't care. Here's Emery Eve to end things. Thank you very much for being with me, and thank you for listening.
Slipped away, no more words for you. Take it back, no matter what you do. The truth, breathe it out, face your boundaries. Our mission trudge through the mud of time. This truth, casts shadows in the dark. Shadows in the dark. I'm too far in and too far gone. The only way in is through in the darkness I see. What you've taken from me, something I had all along. The truth, just breathe the truth. I cast shadows is me. Breathe it out, make your battle marks. Our mission trudge through the mud of time. This truth, casts shadows in the dark. Shadows in the dark. Shadows in the dark. Shadows in the dark. Shadows in the dark.